So Keenagers is a word I'm using to describe older adulthood today, particularly as people transition into older adulthood in their 50s, 60s, and 70s. Now, if you get Social Security at 65, you're looking at a couple of decades ahead of you.
Right.
And that timeline, and I wanted a positive word. I wanted a positive word to talk about older adulthood to help us reshape how we are thinking about it. And it's really super important to remember that you don't just get a paycheck out of work. You get brain stimulation. You get physical stimulation. It makes you get up every day and walk around and do things. I mean, we see people all the time who say, "Well, I'm going to stay home. I want to age in place. I don't want to move anywhere." And they're living in a 2-story house with no bedroom on the first floor, with 5 or more steps at every entrance.
What if everything you've been told about aging is wrong? Today on Aging with Innovation, today's episode, I sit down with Dr. Corinne Auman. She's the author of Keenagers. She's an educator. She's a speaker, a keynote speaker, and president of Choice Care Navigators. And she's flipping the script on what it means to grow older. So forget about like reclining on rocking chairs and like the slow decline. Dr. Auman introduces us to the concept of Keenagers. These are people who are entering some of the most vibrant, most purposeful, and most exciting decades of their lives. So today we're going to dive into a couple of things. One of those being why retirement doesn't have to mean a slow and steady decline, and how to tap into new passions and purpose after 60, and the power of rewriting your aging story, and why your best years might actually be ahead of you. So this conversation will change how you see aging, not as something to fear, but as an opportunity to thrive. So if this resonates with you, first and foremost, I'd appreciate it, meaning the world to me, if you hit that subscribe button and share this episode with somebody who might need to hear it. So let's build that community together and age in innovation, not resignation. So again, Dr. Corinne Auman, let's get back to the episode.
Dr. Auman, it's an absolute pleasure to have you here on this show today. One, I wanted to welcome you. Thank you for taking some time out of your busy schedule. I'm super excited to have this conversation. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to frame this conversation a bit because I recently picked up your book, Keenagers. I know that's in your background there as well. And it's something that's very personal for me as well, because my parents fall right into that age range. And it really shifted my perspective, just reading your book, and made me have to go in a little bit deeper and say to myself, man, I need to bring some of these things up. I need to have some of these conversations. And also I need to send my parents a copy of your book too, because I think it'll be immensely valuable for them. But I guess the overarching question that I have, I think this will set us up for a good discussion, is what is Keenagers? What are Keenagers? And I guess why did you write this book?
Sure. So Keenagers is a word I'm using to describe older adulthood today, particularly as people transition into older adulthood in their 50s, 60s, and 70s. But it really can be anybody. There's not an upper limit per se. But the idea for it was older adulthood has really changed. The older adulthood that your grandparents had is not the older adulthood that most people have today, because we've increased our longevity because of better healthcare, better nutrition, sanitation. I mean, there's all kinds of reasons. And that means we are living longer, but it's not really that we've added a bunch of years of older adulthood like the way we think about it traditionally. We've really extended people's midlife years. The people who are transitioning into their 60s and 70s today are not, a lot of them, some of them are, but a lot of them are not really ready to retire fully. They may not want to work their full 40-hour week, but they want to become an entrepreneur. they want to take on that project or that hobby that they've never had time to do before. They want to keep doing things. They want to keep contributing. They're still active and engaged with life. And so it's not our traditional retirement where you had your party and then you went off into the sunset and nobody ever saw you again and you didn't do anything. It's not that at all today. And the problem is our kind of stereotypes around older adulthood have
Mm,
not shifted as older adulthood has changed. And just to give you an example, like when Social Security was first enacted, the average adult lifespan was about 67. So you got Social Security at 65, and we expected you to live a couple of years after that. Now, if you get Social Security at 65, you're looking at a couple of decades ahead of you.
right.
And that timeline becomes very different. Like doing nothing, the rest and relaxation that everybody kind of thinks about with retirement, that is really fun for the first couple of years. And then after that, you kind of look around and go, I'm going to do this for 30 years of my life. And so a lot of people, these teenagers, they have to have a moment to reevaluate and to go,
Yeah.
what do I want to do with all this time that I have that is a gift? Because previous generations did not get it. When we hear people talk about it in the media, it's always the silver tsunami. We've got too many older people. It's a tragedy in all forms. And it's really not, because these years are something that previous generations did not get. Many of these older adults are healthy and active and doing and doing and doing. And that is something we should utilize rather than kind of bemoan.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. In the first part of the book, I think there's a quote or a section from Barbara Waxman that she quoted, and it was about reframing, like, that midlife crisis as more toward like middlescence, I suppose. There was one thing that she said that I think was really important, which was that during this time of life, many folks, many individuals are kind of reevaluating things and searching for meaning, right?
Hmm.
And or to create new meaning in their lives. So I guess the question that I have from here is, like, why do you think it was important to create a new label for those individuals that are kind of fall in that 55 to 75, 80-year-old range?
Because if you go and just Google the word older adult and you try to find synonyms for it, almost all of the words are really, really negative. And there is very little positive language around older adulthood. And language is powerful. The way we talk about something shapes how we view it, it shapes how we think about it. And I wanted a positive word. I wanted a positive word to talk about older adulthood to help us reshape how we are thinking about it. And there really wasn't anything out there. And that's how I ended up coming up with Keenagers. I think I tell the story in the book that a friend of mine were sitting around trying to brainstorm words, and she called her mom, and her mom said, "Oh, we like to be called Keenagers. That's the name we use." And I love it because the definition of keen means highly developed or having a really strong interest in something. And I think that's a perfect description for people in this particular segment of their life.
Yeah, I think it's such a fun term too. And you're right. There's a certain wisdom that comes with that. And as I was reading through the book, yeah, you're right. There's that immediate association. You think of elderly, or there's not a lot of positive, connection between those terms. And then these folks, as you mentioned earlier, like, well, they might have 30 years ahead of them. That's an entirety. That's another lifetime that they get to live. And so I think when we start to recognize how much power words have in them, I think people don't want to buy into the fact that, oh, now I'm older, I need to settle down, I need to slow down. I'm going to retire and sit on a beach. And like, I know I'd be bored. You said 3 years. I'd be bored in maybe 3 months. And I think a lot of folks fall into that bucket. So in your research and the conversations that you've had, how is the definition of like retirement shifting, or like what are you seeing now?
Well, so the word retirement itself literally means to withdraw from work, right? To stop working. And the vast majority of people will do a much more phased retirement now, in the sense that they don't just quit their job and then they never work again. A lot of people are quitting their 40-hour a week, job that they've had for a long time, but then they are doing something else. So maybe they are starting a new business. The most successful entrepreneurs are people over the age of 50. They may be volunteering at whatever local group really speaks to them. They may be working part-time. So one of the things my mom did, she retired, and then she was a middle school teacher, bless her. And she actually went back to school and got another certification, and then went back to teaching part-time with that new certification in her quote retirement. And I think that kind of thing is much more common now than it would have ever been in the past, because people, they don't want to work full time, but they still have things that they're interested in and that they want to do. And that may be paid employment, but it may not. It's going to be very individualized in terms of what you have an interest in and how you want to spend your time.
Yeah. And I think it comes back to, people have worked maybe sometimes their entire lives, their entire careers in a particular industry, and it gave them a reason to get out of bed in the morning. And maybe they didn't love every single day. It's work is work sometimes or
Mhm.
often, but it gave them some meaning. It gave them some purpose. And I think to go that drastic shift to now all of a sudden having nothing, a complete blank slate, like, yes, maybe that's really nice for a period of time and everybody's a bit different. But then at some point, I would have to imagine a lot of these these folks are coming back and saying, well, okay, I'm bored. What do I do next? How do I contribute? How do I
Yeah.
take the knowledge that I already have?
And it's really super important to remember that you don't just get a paycheck out of work. You get brain stimulation. You get physical stimulation. It makes you get up every day and walk around and do things. And you also get socialization from going to work. So when you stop working, you have to figure out, where am I going to get all those other things? Because your brain still wants to be active and wants to be learning new things and doing interesting things. The worst thing you could do for your brain is sit around and just watch TV, right? Like that. We think, oh, that's relaxation, but that's not good for your brain. So we have to figure out where we're going to get those pieces. If we're not going to be going to a workplace every day, how do we fill in those gaps for this extended time period we've got in front of us during the teenager years?
Yeah. No, I love that. And one thing that I saw as I kept going through was the term life design.
Hmm.
And I thought that was really interesting. And, I think we think about a lot of this when we're going through like our teenage years, going into what are we going to do with the rest of our lives? But rarely do we consider what that might look like when we're in our 50s, 60s, and 70s. So if you can maybe share your perspective on that, what you've learned.
Yeah. So I think it's really interesting that we spend so much time, yeah, with people in their teenager years, when they're in high school. How much time do we spend planning and preparing them for those, years right after, for college or for trade school or for that first job? We spend so much time planning for that. And then we have done a very, very poor job of preparing people to plan for retirement. Almost all retirement planning is around financial things, and financial is very important. I am not denying the importance of that, but we don't do anything to help people plan and prepare for all those other aspects of their lives. And I'm actually working on my second book now, which is going to be How to Be a Keenager, and I'm structuring it around these different aspects. So this idea that we have to plan for our spiritual life, our physical life, our intellectual life, our social life, and our emotional life in retirement, because all of those pieces are just as important as making sure you have enough money, right? And that's what that life design piece, to think I'm not just, because what we do right now, we just kind of say, oh, I'm going to retire. And then retirement is this sort of blank slate. It's kind of this abyss in front
Yeah.
of us. What is it? And I want to give people a structure so that they can start to think about all those different aspects and how they're going to manage them, plan for them for this 30 plus year journey that is now ahead of them.
Yeah. And this may transition more into some heavier conversation, but I did see something that was kind of like a light bulb for me, and it was that hope is not a strategy, and it particularly was referencing around like caregiving and what happens when things start to decline.
Hope is not a plan. Yeah.
Yeah, hope is not a plan, right? And I work with a lot of seniors, as do you, and I was at an event at JK Moving where there was a host that interviewed some folks who were probably in maybe their 70s or 80s, and they had transitioned into like senior living, different capacities. And the thing that stood out to me, both of those individuals referenced like, hey, we're so happy that we started like researching, we started planning, we started having these conversations, everything from like, estate planning and wills and trusts, but also, where do we want to live? What do we want our life to look like when we need a little bit more help? Way sooner than we actually needed to.
Hmm.
Um, and so that was something that really hit for me, because I connected that to some of the things that you had mentioned in your book. But maybe we can talk a little bit about that sandwich generation and kind of what they're experiencing, they've got their older adults on the upside and then the children on the other side. Like, what's going on there?
Let's talk about the hope is not a plan piece, and then we'll
Yeah.
come to our sandwich generation people. So many people do not make a plan of any kind for their older adulthood. They are just kind of hoping that it's going to work out, right? Or I have, in my day job as a care manager, I have met with so many families who did no planning. And really, their whole strategy was, I'm going to die warm in my bed and peacefully in my sleep. And they really didn't make any contingency plans for anything else. And that is not a good strategy, because the best way to have things go poorly is to not plan. Not talk to your loved ones about what they want and what they need and where they want to live, and what the financial situation is. Like, that is terrible. Don't do that. But I think, and this is part of my point in the book, I think the reason people don't want to plan is the stereotypes and the fear of growing older. We have such negativity in our culture about growing older, about being associated with older people. The number of times people in their 80s and 90s have said to me, I don't want to move into senior living. I don't want to go live with all those old people. As as if being older is contagious somehow.
Right.
It's like, and so I really think that's one of the things I want us to get around. And that's why I wanted a positive word. If we can talk about aging and older adulthood in a positive way, then it becomes easier to plan for it and to prepare for it, because now it's a stage we're actually sort of looking forward to. And I want to make this go really well. I want to plan and prepare. And when people make a plan, when they start doing all their documents, they meet with their estate planning attorney and all those things, you are setting yourself up for a successful teenagerhood and older adult years, because you have put all the pieces into place to make that happen. And
Yeah.
it's essential. It's essential. And I have seen so many families who have not done that. And don't get me wrong, that's a a good day job for my care management business, because those are the people who show up in my office needing help. But it's avoidable, and everyone will be so much happier and less stressed if we have these conversations ahead of time.
Yeah.
I think that ties into the sandwich generation, because when we have, and I'm right there right now, I have teenagers at home and I have older adult parents right this moment. And having those conversations is hard. But again, once we've had them and you kind of know what the plan is, everybody feels better, because
Yeah.
we know what people want and what they don't want. And again, when you don't talk about it, this is when we have to have contentious family meetings, because the adult children don't necessarily all agree. And if the parents have never told them what they want or how we're going to pay for it or what the plan is, then we may end up fighting, because I think mom wants one thing and my sibling thinks mom wants something else. And who's right? Well, we don't know, because we never had these conversations. And there is so much power in the planning. It's not easy, but there is so much benefit from it. You got to do it.
Yeah. And you mentioned some of the things already, like maybe children not knowing what mom or dad actually wants, but you have these folks that walk into your office every day and they didn't have a plan. Like what are some of the other ramifications or consequences of not having a plan in place?
Oh, so, you know, I also I can be appointed guardian for people who haven't done their paperwork. Basically, all of our guardianship clients are people who did not plan, who never did their healthcare power of attorney and their financial power of attorney, and then something happened. Maybe they developed dementia, or there's been an accident and now we're cognitively impacted because of that, whatever it is. And because they did not do their planning, they are now under guardianship, where somebody else gets to make the decisions for them because they never took the time to do that for themselves. Um, some of our guardianship clients, we are the guardian simply because the adult children cannot agree on what is right or best for that aging parent. And so somebody has been appointed guardian because of the infighting among the adult children. So I mean, there are real life consequences to not doing these things. But I also think there are consequences just in terms of you may not get the care you want. You may be thinking in your own head, I really want to go to this place down the street that's got a great reputation and is a great community. But if you don't actually tell anybody that's where you want to go, then who knows what kind of decision is actually going to get made in a crisis.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the word that comes to mind is caregiving too,
Mhm.
right? So there's all this planning that goes involved, and then at some point we're probably all going to need care, like as we get older, and then outlining what that looks like. What's important to me. We circle back to, well, having that life plan. I think a lot of people don't actually take the time to get clarity on what they want to. I would speculate. I don't know this for sure,
No, yeah,
but
because they're hoping. So 7 out of 10 people need some form of long-term care, at least temporarily. Maybe you just need short-term rehab after being in the hospital, but most people are going to need some form of care at some point. But I think all of us sit around and think, well, I'm going to be the 3 people. I'm going to be in the 3 people who never need care. That's going to be me. And that that hope in that situation is what keeps them from actually making a plan, because they just go, yeah, I don't think I'm gonna need that. And it's also what keeps them from making appropriate home modifications to make sure you can age in place. I mean, we see people all the time who say, well, I'm gonna stay home. I wanna age in place. I don't want to move anywhere. And they're living in a 2-story house with no bedroom on the first floor, with 5 or more steps at every entrance, narrow doorways that it's going to be really hard to get a walker or a wheelchair through if they need anything like that. And they're just sitting there going, yeah, I'm just going to stay here. It's going to be great. And
like
they, yeah,
cross the
yeah,
fingers.
yeah, yeah. And they could stay there. I'm not trying to say everybody needs to move. They could stay there, but they're going to have to take some action. They may need to remodel the bathroom. They may need to turn an office into a bedroom on the first floor. They need to be thinking ahead. And the time to do the home modifications is before you need them, not after something has happened and you already need the walk-in shower or you already need the ramp to get in the house. And if you just plan ahead and go, hey, these are some things that we could do that would make this house suitable for us as we grow older, do them ahead of time.
Yeah. I would guess over the past 50, 75, 100 years, a lot of this has changed mainly because, particularly around caregiving, because I think people are moving away from their immediate communities a lot more than they would have, say, 100 years ago.
Absolutely.
And so when I came across the section on long distance caregiving, it kind of hit for me because my parents are up in New York. I'm in Virginia. My sisters are close. And I'm saying to myself, yeah, this one kind of hits home for me. And my parents are still healthy. They're 65, 67 now. If I get that wrong.
Oh, no, I got you. I did a social media post and I said that my mom was 81 and she's 80. And I want you to know the day that went, and I knew I'd made the mistake, but I didn't want to refilm the whole thing. And
Yeah,
the day that post went up, she called me and she was like, I'm sorry, what?
I know I'm going to get the same backlash as well, but they're right in that age. But how have you seen, like what sort of differences are there? What type of considerations should we come across for those who are maybe, caregiving from a distance or their parents are not close to where they live?
Yeah. So I mentioned earlier, my day job is as a care manager.
Yeah.
And I think that is um, as an essential piece. Once your parents start to actually need some care, that will be a lifesaver for you and your sisters. Care managers can help you coordinate everything. We joke a lot that we're adult daughters for hire. My team happens to be all women. And we will do everything that an adult child would do if they were there, or if they didn't already have full time jobs and they were raising children and doing all these other things. So, a lot of our clients are long distance caregivers. We have family members in Portugal, in the Philippines. We have family members in Virginia because I'm in North Carolina. And we do all the things that they can't do because they're not here. And then we keep them informed. We keep them in the loop all the time. And you can find a care manager in your area by going to aginglifecare.org. I'll make sure I send you that so you can put it in the show notes.
Yeah. And I'll drop it in the show notes too.
Yeah. And you can just there's a search feature on that website so that you can find somebody local, because that's what you want. You want somebody who knows the local resources, who's going to be close to your parents, who can go visit them, who can check on things, who can go to the hospital if anything happens until you can get there. So things like that you can put in place to assist. I also think it's really important if you're a long distance caregiver to do this planning ahead of time, because if you already know what your parents want and kind of what their plan is, then if there is a crisis, you got it. You know what they want. You're going to be able to make good decisions. What we don't want is to be making decisions in a crisis when we're already emotional without good information.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
Yeah. It's interesting because I was having a conversation with a senior care advisor not too long ago. And what he told me was that went through a process where, like, all of a sudden the medical status of his dad changed pretty quickly, and now he's in the hospital and he's having to figure out, oh my goodness, what do I need to do? And he's like, I trained for this. I know what I'm supposed to be doing here. I help families do this every day. But in
It's
this
different.
moment of crisis, I don't know what to do. I need to call somebody. And
hmm
so I think when the emotions are there in those urgent moments, it can be very difficult. And so coming back to the importance of the plan and also having somebody who isn't like maybe part of the family, like that we can kind of remove some of the emotions so we can make clear decisions is super important.
Yeah, and I agree completely. I mean, if it's your family member, I joke with one of my care managers all the time that if something happens with my parents, I have to hire her to come in because it's different when it's your own family members. And also sometimes it's important to have somebody else come in because your parents may listen to that social worker or nurse, whoever comes in to assist. They may not listen to you because you're their kid and they changed your diapers and they don't think anything you say really matters. I mean, and not, but it's this parent child relationship. I cannot tell you how many times I have gone in to a family and said similar things to what the adult children were saying, but because I am not their child, they would listen to me and the adult child is in the background going, but that there is
I just said the same
I
thing.
just said the same thing,
Yeah.
but because I'm an objective third party, then they'll take it differently. And that's really useful sometimes.
Yeah. A topic that I've been hearing a lot about lately from, well, my wife's parents, my parents, is Medicare, Medicare, Medicare. And without going down an infinite rabbit hole of Medicare, I suppose, what is, like, high level, what is it that folks in their mid 60s maybe need to know as it pertains to, like, caregiving and services that maybe are covered versus not covered?
Medicare doesn't typically pay for long-term care. People think that Medicare pays for assisted living or for memory care, for your skilled nursing stay, and it does not. That is the number one misconception. Some Medicare Advantage plans do have some home care services that they'll support in limited amounts, but typically long term Medicare is meant for acute care. It's meant for your doctor's visits, for your hospital stay, but it is not meant to pay for your care over the long term. So your stay in an assisted living or a memory care or long term in a skilled nursing will be private pay, long term care insurance, or Medicaid. VA will pay for some of it if you were a veteran and if you're honorably discharged, and there's a lot of rules around that, but there is a VA benefit if that applies to you. But most people are quite surprised to find out that Medicare does not pay for long-term care and that you're on the hook for those services out of your own pocket, or if you did buy a long-term care insurance policy, or you've got to impoverish yourself to the point that Medicaid will kick in.
Right. And it is interesting that Medicaid picks up, some of those services. But so it puts people in a weird position, particularly the middle class folks who, right, they're on Medicare. Maybe they're not high net worth individuals, but they've worked their whole lives. They've done fairly well,
Mhm.
but paying out of pocket for these services is expensive.
Mhm.
Right. And so they look at that and say, man, that's not really an option. But also, do I really want to spend down all of my assets
Mhm.
and put myself in a position where now I'm on Medicaid? So they're kind of in the middle there.
Mhm.
And yeah, I guess maybe if you could riff on that or elaborate on what's going on with that particular subset of people.
Yeah, it's really hard because people who are very wealthy have enough money to pay for care. People who are impoverished already may qualify for Medicaid or other services. It is people, yeah, like you said, in the middle class who maybe make just a little too much money to qualify for any Medicaid assistance, but then don't have enough money to actually pay for care. And so there are your options in that situation are to think about how you're going to make the money stretch in terms of home care, family assistance, those kinds of things. You can also go to an estate planning attorney and try to do some estate planning to maybe help you qualify for Medicaid to pay for your long term care. If this is again another reason we have to plan, because if that is something you're thinking, yeah, I'm probably going to need to do that because otherwise I don't know how we pay for this, that is something you really need to do well in advance, because in many states Medicaid has a look back period, and if you've moved all your money out of your accounts and let's say into a trust in order to try to qualify for assistance, they are going to look back over the last 3 to 5 years. This is in North Carolina. It's going to be different in every state. But they may look back and go, no, 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 you just moved all that money, or you just gave it away, or whatever you were trying to do, and you're going to not qualify because of that. So if you're going to do something like that, it needs to be done years in advance. You can't just do it like the moment you go, oh, I'm going to need care, I better get that money moved.
I'm in the hospital now, I need to.
No. So,
Right.
But I do think it's worth, everybody's situation will be a little different. And I do think it's worth sitting down with an estate planning attorney and just saying, hey, do I have options here? And what are they at this point?
Yeah. Yeah. I've been hearing a lot about estate planning, and the thing that comes to mind for me is, I want to get very tactical here, because let's assume, we're talking, you're talking to that person who's, they're very healthy, they're active, they're not retired yet. Maybe they're 64, 65. They're thinking about retirement. They're thinking about all of these things that we've talked about. They're like, well, where do I start with all
Mhm.
this? Is there like a process you could recommend, or a first step? Like, what would you have them do?
I'd have them read my book. I mean, it just seriously though, to give yourself a framework to think about it, because I think the way we have culturally set people up, we don't give you any sort of framework of here are the things you need to be thinking about. And I mean that from a paperwork standpoint, but also an ageism standpoint. Like, how are you thinking about these years that are ahead of you? And is that accurate? How could you reframe it in a positive way? And just to help people kind of get in the right mindset of, I have a lot of control over this, and I'm going to take that control. Because we know that, like, how your aging experience goes is about 30% genetics and about 70% lifestyle and the planning and preparation you've done. So, okay, let's get in that mindset. I've got a lot of control over this now. And then all the things we've been talking about in terms of doing your paperwork, doing your will, your healthcare power of attorney, your financial power of attorney, thinking about, okay, if I retire, where am I going to get my socialization? How am I going to be intellectually stimulated? Like, what am I going to do with my time and with this long stretch of, I'm putting this in quotes, retirement? Because I gotta restructure that. So just helping people make that shift from, I'm going to retire and it's going to be all bliss and margaritas on the beach, to, I'm going to retire and I'm going to get some margaritas on the beach, and I'm going to want something I need to do on a Wednesday morning to motivate me to get out of bed. And that is a big change for a lot of people. People have not thought about it that way.
Yeah. And I think as folks get closer to those retirement years, there may be that overwhelming anxiety of like, oh, maybe I do need to figure this stuff out. But I think the key here is, like, it's not something that you sit down one day and you figure it all out, right? It's a self-discovery process too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I also think it's one you need to be prepared for a little pushback on as well. So I have a friend who's 69 and still working full time. He's a college professor. And he talks about, like, he saw somebody on campus the other day and they looked at him and said, "Oh, are you retired?" And he's like, "I'm on campus with a backpack on. What
Why would you think I'm
Why would
retired?
you think I'm retired?" But it's that narrative. He's a certain age, he's got gray hair. And so people just automatically start asking you, "Well, aren't you retired?" Or, "Why haven't you retired?" And he even said to me, he's like, "Are they trying to send me a message? Are they trying to tell me I should retire, that I'm not good at my job anymore?" Right? Like, would they tell me if that was the case? And so it makes people start questioning their abilities, questioning the situation that they're in. He loves his job. That's why he hasn't retired. He loves his jobs. He loves around being around college kids. It gives him a lot of energy. It gives him a intellectual stimulation, all of these things. But the way people react to him as a 69-year-old still on a college campus teaching, it starts to filter in, especially when person after person after person keeps saying it to you, because they've got this cultural narrative of, why haven't you retired? It's time for you to retire. You should retire. And he's going, but what would I do with my
Yeah.
time?
What would I do in
And I
retirement?
really like what I'm doing. If he hated what he was doing, I'm sure he would have left a long time ago, but he doesn't. And so be prepared that if you choose a different path, there's going to be some pushback from people around you, because you're not doing what they expect you to do.
Yeah. Is that, you mentioned the word ageism a few times. Is that what this is, or is this something different?
Well, ageism is biased against somebody based on their age. And it can apply to young people, right? If somebody's being told they can't get a promotion, or you can't do something because of their age. But we typically think about it with people as they get older, age discrimination against older adults. And that can happen in the workplace, like being passed over for a promotion because they think, oh, well, you're going to retire in a couple of years, so we don't really want to like invest in you, promote you. I'm being passed over for trainings, or even being forced out because they're thinking, well, we can, if we lay you off or push you out, we can hire somebody younger that's less expensive, or um, you're going to retire anyway, so go ahead and we're going to push you out. So it can happen in healthcare. If a doctor says to somebody, like your shoulder hurts, and you go in and they say, well, at your age, what do you expect? It's like, doc, I got this other shoulder, and this other shoulder doesn't hurt. So could we look at this? And those kinds of things happen all the time. And again, it's kind of built into our culture because we make really ageist birthday cards. There's a card I use in some of my presentations that's like the 7 dwarves of old age, and it's farty, smelly, sleepy. I mean, it's horrible. It's horrible. But it's very pervasive, and it's in your own head. Like, if you have ever thought to yourself, I'm too old to wear that, or I'm too old to do something, that is ageism. It's internalized ageism, and it's keeping you from doing something you want to do or wearing something you want to wear. And I really want people to recognize that. One of the things I always say is that fighting ageism is an inside job, because you have to start in your own head. You have to go, I had my headphones and they wouldn't connect to my iPhone. And I said, oh, these are my old headphones. They're just tired and cranky. And my husband looked at me and he was like, that's ageist, right? Yeah, cool, cool. So, I mean, once you recognize it, you will not believe the things that are coming out of your own mouth, that people are saying to each other, and it's just everywhere. But I think if we can get people to recognize it and go, 175-year-old is 175-year-old, and we cannot group everybody based on this stereotype. And that's very, very important. And that will help us reshape how we're looking at aging when we stop applying those stereotypes so broadly.
Yeah, and I think it brings up such a good point, in that they don't have to buy into the story. They don't have to buy into the narrative that society has placed, yeah, upon them. And I say them and they because, I mean, I'm 38 right now. So,
But
but
you
I think it's true for anyone, because like we look at stereotypes of people at different ages. Oh, that's like, the Generation X or the millennial generation, or, oh, they're not hard workers. They're not this. It happens at all different groups. Right. And so it all comes down to, yeah, but that's one, we're each individuals.
Mhm.
And just because, like, maybe I feel healthy, I'm playing tennis, I'm 75 years old, and I ran a marathon last week. You're not going to group me with the same 75-year-old that I can't get off the couch. Right. So I don't have to believe those same things.
And I think we the 75-year-old who's running the marathon, we portray them sometimes like they're some sort of super senior or like they're some sort of outlier. And my message is that is way more common than you think. And when you start interacting a lot with older people, you realize that. When I first started my care management business, I thought that I was going to work with 40-year-olds who were caring for 70-year-olds. And I'm working with 70-year-olds who are caring for their 90-year-old parents. I mean, I've got one gentleman right now, he's 71 and I'm helping him take care of his 95-year-old mom. So that is the difference. And it's way more common. The other thing is, you were talking about your age. We're all aging. We talk about older people, again, as if they are some sort of like alien subgroup that none of us are associated with, but we are all aging. And we should all care about how older people are viewed and portrayed, because we're all hoping we're going to be lucky enough to get there. And if you don't like how older people are treated or are portrayed, if you don't like it and that makes you not want to get there, then you ought to care about changing that narrative so that when you get there, it's a better experience.
Yeah, that's a fantastic point. Well, as we're kind of coming close on time here, I guess we'll finish off with what are the important questions maybe teenagers in that age group should be asking themselves, maybe to create their new story as they embark on this new phase of life, and so they can make the most of the extra years, the years that they have.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the first things is, considering their own internalized ageism. Is there anything that they want to do that they're not doing because of their age, because they think they're too old, or they think other people will think they're too old, or that it's not appropriate for them to do in some way? So, starting there, kind of what is it you'd really like to do? If age had nothing to do with it, what is it that you would really like to be doing? And starting with that question to help guide hobbies, exercise, business ideas. I mean, any of that to help you figure out what's the best way I can spend this time, because we only get one go round, right? And when you've got these years ahead of you, make the most of them. Do the things. Stop caring what anybody else thinks and do the things you want to do.
And that's a great point to leave off on there is, right, just get clarity on that. And who cares if someone else thinks you're too old? If you think you can do it,
Yeah.
go for it.
Yeah.
Go for it.
I guarantee that somebody else will be inspired by you and be like, oh, I want to do that too. And that's one of the funnest things for me in interviewing people who are in this this age group, their teenager years. They make me really look forward to growing older, because they're having a great time and they're doing fun. They're not, they've got problems, they got health issues. They're not some sort of perfect, senior, but I see so much opportunity, and it makes me fear aging so much less, because it's like, oh no, this could be really fun. Let's do this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So I want to make sure people have the opportunity to connect with you. And so if anyone is interested, like where would you have them? Is there like social media they can reach out, or how do you want folks to connect with you? Obviously buy the book, which I did. I'm going to send a couple of these out, but where else would you have people connect?
So you can connect with me on my website, which is my name, CorinneAuman.com. You can also connect with me on all the social medias. Keenagers book are my professional accounts, and those are linked on my personal website as well.
Awesome. I'll put all of those links in the show notes here to make it easy for people. I want to thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule today to have this conversation. And again, go buy the book. It's fantastic. You'll enjoy it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.